Welcome to the MarTech.org podcast.
This episode was recorded live during the Spring 2024 MarTech Conference. Enjoy!
Welcome to our coffee talk. Today we are going to be discussing how AI can enhance customer experience. And my name is Alicia Arnold. I am a career, I guess I'll call it, lifer in consulting and advertising, have seen the world of MarTech evolve from Excel sheets into AI, chat, natural language processing, all of the crazy stuff that we're here to talk about today. And I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, Mike Kaput.
Thanks, Alicia. My name is Mike Kaput. I'm the Chief Content Officer at a company called Marketing AI Institute. We help marketers understand, pilot, and scale artificial intelligence. We've been doing that since way back in 2016 after we spun out of a marketing agency that our owner used to run and also that I used to work for. So kind of marketers who came to AI a fair amount of time ago and kind of are learning along the way with everyone else and teaching a few things that we learned.
Excellent. And so for today's session, for anyone who feels comfortable just kind of like asking a question, participating, feel free to do so. If you'd rather use the chat function, you are welcome to use that as well. So we've got a poll that we started. So let us take a look. For those of you who may have joined us a minute or so ago, we put a poll up and you can access that by going to the bottom right-hand side of your screen. You'll see a grouping of 3 shapes. If you click on that, there is a poll that is up and running. I'm going to click into that now. And our question that we have for you, and this is a nice, easy one to get started because I'm guessing everybody is on some part of the journey since you're here with us today. Where is your company when it comes to that AI journey? So we have a couple of options there, and we can get those going. The poll is live. Mike, as folks are answering that, I would love to get your opinion on something. And I think it's a really interesting one because you hear so many stories, you go online, you're reading what's out there, there's some conflicting information. What's your take on what's hype and what's real when it comes to AI and marketing?
That's a really good question. It's a question where the answer, I think, is kind of a moving target because there's plenty of hype out there. No mistake about that. However, yesterday's hype is sometimes today's reality, just because what we're seeing is generally AI models that are underlying a lot of the marketing and business technology that's coming out today are getting really, really good, really, really fast. So I don't think we're at the stage at all where AI can do everything for you without human involvement. We may never be there. AI is not some magic bullet that immediately solves everything. However, the reality is AI today, and increasingly so every day moving forward, is able to do very, very interesting knowledge work within marketing and in many cases augment what we do as marketers and business people. So I would say the hype is around how easy AI can be to apply, and the hype is around AI being able to immediately solve different things. In reality, it takes a ton of work, ton of experimentation, but these tools are extremely powerful. And you need to take that seriously, I would say, as a marketer.
Excellent. Love it. And I'm sure we're going to be hearing some stories about what we're seeing out there. Let's jump into the poll and see where folks are on that journey. Let's see.
So we've got probably about 20 votes total, it looks like, 21. And the majority, 12 votes, are testing some initial use cases. We have 8 votes for have found a few places where AI is adding value. 1 vote for haven't started yet, and 0 votes for we've mastered it. So it sounds like a lot of initial experimentation.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I would love to hear from some folks who are testing it or found some places where AI is working. What have you been working on, assuming it's not confidential and you can share some of that with us? I'd love to hear what other folks are doing. Oh, I think we've got, is someone speaking? Michelle, I think, are you speaking? No? Okay. What are your thoughts, Mike, in terms of what you've seen? What are some of the tests that are working?
Yeah, sure. I can share some of what we're doing. So for some context, at Marketing AI Institute, we play in a few different spaces. So we're a media, event, and education company. So we're essentially kind of like a marketing company. We're doing all the stuff that your average digital marketer is looking to do day in, day out. Things like content, social media, SEO, email, etc. So a lot of our use cases as a small team are focused on trying to make our daily work a lot more efficient to begin with. And we could talk about kind of some of the more transformative effects AI can and will have on customer experience and marketing in general. But I would say right now we have achieved some pretty dramatic time savings across kind of core marketing tasks, things like creating our weekly podcast, creating regular content, promoting that content across different channels. We've been using a variety of AI tools ourselves in a very experimentative way to save dramatic amounts of time. Like we're talking going from, like dozens and dozens and dozens of hours per month for certain tasks to a handful of hours. So that's been transformative for us as a small business. It just allows us to not only do so much more, but do a bunch of the things that are much higher value than kind of that typical important blocking and tackling that you're doing every day in the trenches as a marketer.
I love it. And the whole idea of podcasts, I'm sure most of our organizations are doing podcasts or thinking about doing podcasts. Could we dig a little bit deeper into the how and maybe do a best practice for folks? Because it would be great to leave with a tip that they might be able to try when they get back to their organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously every podcast is different, but ours revolves around a weekly podcast that kind of covers like news in AI. So me and our CEO break down what's going on in the industry each and every week, of which there's like a million and one things every single week to try to keep track of. And a lot of the actual content of the podcast, what we are talking about, that's all human driven. That's not like AI telling us what to talk about or how to talk about it. That's kind of the unique creative value we bring to the table, is connecting the dots for our audience. But everything around that, all the production, all the prep, all the research, it's not like AI is doing that for us, but it is augmenting every step of that. So using AI tools to do better research, summarize, especially in AI, complex content and reports, like having AI be an explainer for us to learn more about a particularly complicated topic or one that may be more technical than we're exactly comfortable with. So all of this raw data that we have to process each and every week to make this podcast, AI helps with that. It helps with organizing and synthesizing that content. And then after the podcast episode's recorded, we actually use a variety of tools to produce the podcast. So we have an AI tool that we love called Descript that our team uses to professionally produce and edit the video and audio of the podcast. Our team does not have professional video and audio editing skills. So that's been an incredible help. And that has a number of AI features, like it automatically removes filler words from the recording. If you want, it can overdub your voice with an AI voice clone. So if I screw up on the podcast, we can re-record something. We don't often use that, but it's nice to have. And then from there, certain AI tools are helping us pretty quickly turn that podcast episode into really valuable content in other formats. So content for our blog, our website, social media, video clips are a big one. We use a tool that automatically turns the episode itself into short form video for like TikTok. So that was something we just did not have the time to do before. So there's all these ways where AI is helping us chip away at all the production work related to this core content asset.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. I think it's nice because we get some tools in there. We get some thumbs up. Good job. Love it. We actually have a couple of pieces that have come into the chat. So Sandra, I'm not sure if you would be interested in sharing a little bit more in terms of what you're doing and when you take a look at some of those internal use cases.
We haven't gone too far yet in terms of the internal AI model. Right, we're still feeding it all of our content. We try to ask it some questions. We've actually found where the bot will sort of search all of our content for outdated things. So that's been really helpful for us to keep our information up to date and kind of get rid of stuff that is no longer applicable. So that's been an interesting discovery when we've been pulling this out. But so far, it's been helpful for me. We have like 7 lines of business, so we can go through, ask it a question, and it will start to pull everything and give us those resources and link out to it, so we don't have to go searching all over the place.
That's excellent. I love it. I think starting with something like that is nice because you get the organization really on board and they get to see some of that impact, and it gives them a little bit more confidence to move further. So that's a really great approach, Sandra. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm also interested. Stephen, you had a comment about Adobe Target AI, and I think the conversations going on between like Google and Adobe trying to win that war on eyeballs is really an interesting one. What's your experience been with Adobe?
Yeah, I mean, we're really just taking advantage of what's built into Adobe Target in terms of the AI. So with audience targeting and segmenting and sort of picking up those behavioral signals, and then just sort of testing and automating. One of the challenges I think we have are audience size, because we don't have one monolithic site. We have a bunch of smaller local and regional sites, and to generate good, valid tests and to personalize for those. It helps to have the artificial intelligence do that work for you, so that we can get the answers a little bit faster. So that's really the only place we've been taking advantage of it. It sounds like, maybe Adobe's got some more in store coming, and we'll hear maybe more at Summit or something like that. But that's what we've been doing so far, and just sort of testing it out. So it just seems like our testing goes a little bit quicker, and our results are a little bit stronger in that shorter period of time without having to go through the manual process and wait for the whole, ABN testing to go through or something like that. So.
That's great. Now, have you noticed, Stephen, that you've had to get folks to sharpen their skill sets? Has there been any switch?
Absolutely. Yeah. So most of my job is getting everybody sort of onboarded into the Adobe Experience Cloud platform. That's the majority of my role here at Bear. So, and it takes a lot. So in fact, we sort of make them go through analytics before they go through optimization and personalization, because it's really hard to do that if you don't understand sort of the data and the signals behind it. So yeah, there's a lot of upskilling in terms of that, not in terms of using the tool so much. That's actually, because it's built in, it's kind of easy. They're not really super aware that they're using AI. It's not like the generative AI where they're starting to, generate content from it. I think that'll probably be next step. So, but it's a nice way to let them know that they've gotten their feet wet in AI and not to be intimidated by it.
That's great. I like that. A nice little on-ramp. That's actually a nice segue for Angelina. I think you mentioned in the chat that you're using it for content generation. What's the experience been for content generation?
So I'm using like in different fields in our company. For example, I'm doing SEO, and I use IE for this link building content because it saves a lot of time. But I don't like ChatGPT for this. I use Jasper or Surfer SEO, but also you have to proofread after. And in general, these kind of texts are getting the position in top 10 of Google, low volume keywords. So it's really cool because you just click some buttons, research some keywords, and you receive a nice high quality content that is readable and that get a positions, and also you have a backlink from the website. This is cool. And also I know that in our company we're using ChatGPT for creating content for social media, but we have to proofread the content to be sure the style and the information provided is correct. And also one more with the content is to how our copywriters are working with IE to create a really high quality blog content, but you have to chat in with both with IE to get the information you want to have. So But in general, yeah, it saves time, a lot of time, and you can provide a lot of content.
Excellent. Thank you. So I see folks are starting to put some questions into the chat. Is there anything that the team here is curious about that you'd like to discuss? Did you come in with any questions, burning questions or otherwise, that you want to make sure that you get answered? If there's anything like that, feel free to drop it in the chat and we'll be sure to cover that one as well. So Mike, after hearing some of the interesting pieces where people are starting to investigate and found some success, what are your thoughts? Where do you see this going?
Yeah, that's a big question for sure. I think we are seeing, if you had asked me this a year ago, the first answer to every question was like getting people to actually care about this stuff. Like our company's been around since like 2016 and it's been an uphill battle for several years to get people to understand kind of, okay, like there's something here that you need to be paying attention to as a marketer. Obviously that changes once you see something like ChatGPT. So I think where we're going is we've hit the phase where people understand that this is in some way in their business or their marketing a core skill set and technology they need to be addressing and figuring out. I think where we're really going is kind of where we saw in that poll. People are experimenting at the moment, but where we've seen organizations not struggle, but really devote their time is like, okay, how can we actually be getting some of these use cases into deployment where they are creating extreme value for the business? Because there's plenty of low-hanging fruit right now when it comes to some generative AI tools, but there's a lot of like practical obstacles to this technology, right? I mean, you have to deal with internal regulations, legal, data, privacy, all these big concerns that I think a lot of companies are struggling to figure out, us too. I mean, it's kind of a new frontier. But I think where we're going is you're going to probably this year start to see more success stories where people are like, okay, we finally got a handle on AI for a couple of really core use cases, and the results were pretty significant, would be my bet at least.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. Why don't we do this? Let's go to the second poll because I feel like there are so many different areas that folks are experimenting with AI, from content to targeting, doing a little bit of personalization. Let's put that second poll up and get a sense of where we're going to be seeing some of this traction coming up. All right. Let's see. I like how once you answer the poll, you can see it shifting. It's like really, it was neck and neck, and now we've got some different piece of this polling forward.
Yeah, it's like watching a horse race or something over here.
It's fun. That's interesting. So it seems like personalization, data analysis, optimizing campaigns are our top three, none for anticipating customer needs. Great. All right. So as that poll is continuing, let's talk a little bit about that. So we've heard from some folks about content creation. The optimizing campaigns, I think, is interesting. Are there folks out there who are doing any new types of endeavors when it comes to optimizing campaigns using AI? Mike, are there any tools that come to mind when you think about optimizing campaigns that are interesting to know about?
Yeah, sure. So I'll suggest one that I think just is interesting, not because it's more for enterprises, so we are not using it ourselves, but I do like the use case behind it. And I'm sure there are other tools that do this, but just as a way to kind of show what's possible and like what's kind of different about certain AI tools over traditional technology is a tool called Persado. So I'll drop a link in the chat here, but basically what Persado does, and maybe some people are using it, not sure, I've tested it out. It understands or can try to predict what language in your marketing copy or your campaign will resonate most with individual people. So if you have customer A they probably respond to different language than customer B does. Like for instance, Alicia, you might be motivated by language around more around achievement. I might be motivated more by language around, I don't know, surprise or newness or something like that. So what Persado can do is start taking a single piece of content, copy or ad, and changing it in real time to people's different motivational preferences. So you're actually able to start personalizing campaigns and initiatives based on not only your offer, your brand language, and your unique relationship with customers, but also saying it in the way that they actually respond to. So I thought that's pretty cool and worth checking out.
There's an interesting one that I saw yesterday. It's called Sienna AI, and it's all about using AI for customer service and what they do. And I haven't tried it out myself, but you can feed it your information about your company, your brand, your tone, your persona, and it will start to answer in AI like they were someone from your company. So I think that's kind of interesting where you can start to tailor it more and start using some of the brand language and just making sure you've got the tone and brand persona correct in the way that you're responding. So there's some really interesting tools out there.
That's a really good use case. And I want to actually just take a second, kind of double click on that, because I haven't heard of that tool in particular, but I know a fair amount of people are using one tool or another to essentially do that, to like create virtual personas that you can converse with and understand better. And I think that's one of those areas where this is where kind of the excitement around AI comes in, because you couldn't really do that before, right? Is have like a avatar, let's say, of an intelligent person that if you give it the right information can actually respond to you and challenge you to think better. So kind of thinking of these tools as I don't know, like a cognitive co-pilot in that sense, I think is really powerful, even if it's a little subtle. You could learn so much more, come up with so many better ideas probably if you're bouncing your ideas and talking in depth with some of these systems, as long as they're armed with kind of the right insights.
Yep, I love it. There's just so much going on there in that space. As far as that customer service space, there are some really interesting ways that it's helping to alleviate fears or give people more information. I think, what are some of the ways that you're seeing it enter the market from a customer service perspective? Are there any stories that you would like to share in terms of helpful bot situations?
So I can just share one kind of quick example to kick things off. Is like, I was recently at a conference related to the destination marketing industry. So basically tourism bureaus that promote cities, locations, states, whatever. And one of the companies there was helping your local, like Visit North Carolina group or whatever, build custom GPTs using ChatGPT that were actually like armed with all the information and insight about the specific destination, which customers could then talk with and get really good answers, get up-to-date information on questions they might have about planning their visit. So I think that's not information they weren't able to get before, but this conversational aspect to it and having something that's extremely dynamic and trained on, doesn't have to be a destination, could be your brand, could be your product offering, et cetera, I think has a ton of value for the future of kind of customer experience. I mean, that's going to be such a powerful unlock for the brands that can figure it out in the right way.
Yep, absolutely. Everyone is doing that testing and learning. I love it. This is a curiosity of mine, and we don't actually have to go down this lane, but I'd love to just test it out a little bit and see what people are thinking. Is anyone talking about, and you can just put a yes or no in the chat, is anyone talking about the environmental impact of AI? Because you're starting to hear that creep up in mainstream publications and news. So I don't know if that's just something that they're picking up on from a publication standpoint, or if it's real. Are there conversations going on in organizations organizations about the environmental impact? I think it's an interesting one because when we're talking to customers, we've got a couple of yeses, heavy water usage, right, about AI. There's been a little bit of pushback in terms of like, you have to find me the right use case so that we're not just kind of like scatter shooting and trying to figure things out and doing a lot of things that could potentially be wasteful. So I'm seeing it a little bit creep up. I don't think it's really mainstream, but it is one of the topics that you're hearing about a little bit. Marian, what are you hearing out there?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Basically, heavy water usage by some of the bigger companies has increased dramatically, especially on the West Coast, where they have water issues. They either have too much or they have too little. And so, moving forward, it's a concern because, there are more and more every day. As you know, there are more and more of these AI that's popping up. And so, we had the issue before with Saudi Arabia, using all the water for the wheat or, something that they fed their cows because they didn't have water there. Now we've got AI that's going to be using all the water. So at some point, unless we can improve our desalinization methodology, we're going to have a problem. Now, for those on the West Coast, if they're near enough to the ocean, I think that's what they need to be concentrating on and get some of their engineers on that, because it's not like there's a taste issue, right, with desalinated water for corporate use. So somebody, who can do that kind of work really needs to get on that, and then we won't have to worry about it for AI. But I think it's an issue, but that's personal opinion.
Yeah, so it's definitely out there. It's in the conversation. On the flip side, Stephen, you're going to give us an example from, I'm going to say it, Bayer. I think that's the way you say it correctly. I'm not sure. You can let me know. What are your thoughts, Stephen?
That's the way all the Germans say it. So I'm told that's the correct way. I still say bear. So actually, I think we just had a press release go out about this, that they're using some generative AI systems that have been trained by our agronomists and using some proprietary data just to benefit the farmers and the agronomic advisors and stuff to be more efficient, and I think address some of these environmental concerns over time. So I think you're going to see it on both sides, right? So there's always pros and cons to this stuff, but it'll be interesting. It'll certainly be part of the conversation.
I love it. Thank you so much. I think this is probably a good time because we're starting to talk about what we're doing now, and then we're kind of like reaching into what the future might hold for us. Let's talk about predictions. Does anyone have predictions on what's to come? We can call it in the next year. If we want to be really, really forward thinking, let's call it 5 years, because I don't think we can go any further out. Stephen, thank you. You sent us a link. We'll definitely take a look at that. The predictions. Anyone have predictions? Mike, why don't you kick us off?
Oh man, yeah. Even 5 years to me, it feels like it's going to be 100 years from now, just how fast things move. But broadly, some of the trends, don't quote me on any of the timelines here because they could happen much sooner or much later than we think. But kind of some of the trends that we're paying close attention to are, one, the immediate future, probably midway through this year is what we're hearing. We're getting GPT-5. So we're on GPT-4 right now. This will be my guess will be a dramatic step change up in the capabilities of general AI models. And every company that competes with OpenAI will presumably have its own GPT-5 class model. I can't even begin to know what that will look like, but I think it's going to be multiple. It's not going to be 30% better. You're talking like 300% better. So that alone is going to have an immediate and huge impact on a lot of things in the next 6 to 12 months. Longer term, there's a lot of talk and a lot of interest, even though we're still early, in things like what are called AI agents. So I don't know, ChatGPT-like conversational agents that can actually go do things for you online. So go take action. So for instance, eventually getting AI agents where you can say, hey, book me a flight to DC. Here are the airlines I like. Here's when I need to be there and when I need to leave. And it'll go do that for you. We're not there yet, despite some of the demos that we've seen. But 3 to 5 years from now, I would be pretty shocked if we didn't have some form of AI agents that are able to take some type of somewhat autonomous action for you. So you could imagine a future where we might have we might hire a bunch of AI agents in our organizations to do different things really well, like a social media agent or a copywriting agent or something like that, where you will just give it an instruction and it will go autonomously try to figure out how to execute that versus you having to kind of prompt a tool.
That's interesting. So what are your thoughts in terms of this group here with us? What are some of the things that they should be thinking out about, maybe some of the actions that they should be taking, considering where you feel this is going? What are some things that we could try?
Yeah, I'm actually going to keep it less sci-fi here because despite all the craziness I think we see coming, we still just see the vast majority, I'm not saying it's this group, but just generally in marketing, the vast majority of companies still really struggle with basic education and training around artificial intelligence, around your average person on your marketing team who may not be championing technology, having them understand what's possible with the tools that you already have, what's possible with the tools you're considering, and generally how AI might impact the work they do every day. That's a tall order to get everyone on board. As someone that basically does AI education full time these days, like, it's not easy to get your team on the same page and have them be both interested and engaged with AI technology. So I think education and training has to be the first, second, and third priority for everyone, including us. We try to eat our own cooking as well. Like, it is very, very tough to get everyone aligned in the right direction and even just get them over the hump of understanding what's possible, but also not being afraid of the technology. There's a lot of very real concerns and considerations out there about how this technology is going to impact a lot of things. So I would say that is my number one tip personally.
And you've got some alignment and agreement in the chat. So that's great. And, when you think about education and training, particularly with time-starved marketers, I don't think any of us are ever going to say we have enough money, enough budget, or enough people to do what we need to do. How do you start to ingrain that into the organization? What are some ways to try to make sure that this is not just I'm going to run a session, you're going to learn, and then we're not going to talk about it for 365 days? What are some ways that you have for making sure that this is ongoing?
So there's plenty of great education sources out there and methods to do this depending on your organization. Obviously, I'm a little biased just because our approach is not the only approach here, but I'll share kind of our approach and why we think it makes some sense. We just focus on this concept of what we call AI literacy for all. And our theory is this, that it's going to be critically important for every single marketer and business person to, at least at a fundamental level, understand what AI is and how it can benefit them in their career and their company. But we're not experts on every single type of business, industry, or function of marketing. We cover a lot of it, but we're not able to go tell you for some hyper-specific industry or business exactly how you should use AI. So I think educating your team to understand what it is and what their use cases are, and there's frameworks, we kind of teach to do that. That is critical because then they have to start running with it, right? Where you say, it's not just about us sitting here top down and telling you here are the ways to use artificial intelligence. It's you also understanding how to apply some of this technology to your own career using your own unique expertise, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so some of this is definitely self-guided. And I think what you're saying is it's best if it's not being pushed at people, but giving them a reason to try to be self-motivated and go out and find some of these pieces of information that are going to help them in their career now or in the future.
Yeah.
That's great. Excellent. So folks, any thoughts or questions? I'll just prompt you to put anything in the chat that you want to make sure that we cover off on. And we might be doing a great job going the gamut, so there may not be any big burning topics that anyone wants to discuss, but I'll just remind you to do that if there's anything that you'd like to discuss. I'm going to also, Mike, for you, give you that opportunity as well. Is there anything that you feel would be important for us with our time together to talk about?
Yeah, so I think I'd be very curious about if anyone wants to share in the chat, just as specific as you can get, if you're willing to share like the use cases you're trying to actually solve here, because I think those would be inspirational for the group. I do love in the chat here some of Nathan's predictions about where we're going. And there's one I wanted to hone in on actually here, which I think is interesting. He said, look, we're probably going to get real-time back and forth conversation similar to Pi, which is one of the AI assistants out there you can just talk to on your phone. You can literally call it and start having a conversation. Today, it's like talking over a walkie-talkie. He says we're going to get to this point where we have fluid conversations with these tools. And I think that's a subtle but really important point. And this is kind of an aspect of what I'm getting at with some of the other comments I've made. It's like, I think these tools are going to really change our behavior over time. It's going to be really interesting to see how both consumers and professionals, in marketing trying to engage with those consumers, start treating these tools in one way or another, just like really smart coworkers. So instead of you looking at this like a typical technology platform to learn, which you certainly do with the tools out there, I think these are just going to be an ever-present part of our everyday life, where I'm going to literally just fire up an app on my phone, or even push a button on my AirPods, whatever generation of those I have at this stage, and talk to machine intelligence, bounce ideas off it, share. We're already seeing this with AI tools and assistants that are what we would call like companion assistants. There's one called character.ai, which is like one of the most popular AI tools out there today in terms of regular monthly users. And it just lets you create AI companions to speak with back and forth. And I think we're going to get into this kind of weird future very quickly, where people are just having conversations with their AI colleagues to achieve marketing and business goals.
I love it. Nathan, I saw you pop up on the screen. Any input on that one?
Yeah, is my audio okay?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, I think that's great, Mike. I was real excited, more recently with the technology like Pi and you were talking about, and I think my biggest frustration is the real time back and forth, like the conversation. Like right now we're talking and you're not going to interrupt me halfway through, even if I pause for a moment, and that's the way these things still are. And I think it's going to it's probably going to take where we start to have like mini versions of AI that run local and on our machines that will be probably faster computing, like just at a conversational level, to kind of pass packets of text back up into the cloud, where these larger, because right now that's what we're doing. It's listening, it's sending everything out, and then you're waiting for everything to come back, and it causes that delay. And I think there's going to be a combination of like on-prem, like on your phone, and in cloud, kind of like back and forth to start to make it smoother. As some form of that. It's going to be interesting, but I think it'll move very quickly. And over the next few months, the speed of which these companies are battling it out right now is amazing.
I love it. I think you're right there, because I think it is going to get much more seamless.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the device thing. I mean, Apple is starting to make some noise about generative AI running locally on your phone in a variety of contexts. And that's exactly, you hit the nail on the head. That's where it is going, is running something locally. Maybe it is, they finally cracked the code on, say, Siri being actually useful, right? You could imagine a near future where maybe you're able to have a seamless conversation on your iPhone with an AI assistant like Siri to get things done, to get advice, to do whatever you're trying to do.
That's great. And I think for some people, like my mom, she's already there. She talks to Alexa like she's her best friend. It's amazing. We do have a couple of questions. So there's a question in the chat about, does anyone have perspective or data on how AI improves or degrades trust with a brand? That's an interesting one. Any takers on that one? I would say it's interesting because, Michelle, I think in some cases, the AI that's being used isn't really talked about. So it's almost like transparent and people don't realize that it's out there. And I think you've got some companies kind of making big splashes into AI, but I don't know if there's anything from my perspective that really comes to mind about use cases and what it does with trust. One of my predictions, and this is kind of like we've had a lot of good predictions, I also believe that there's a prediction where in the next year there's going to be some breach of trust because of AI. And then I think that's where things are going to start to get pretty serious. But I think right now with the experimentation that folks are doing, it's a little bit below the line. And the big players that are out there doing things with AI, they're doing it almost at the superficial level where there isn't a ton of impact to customers yet. So I don't know. I think it's a really interesting question, and we're going to have to keep our eye on the space to see where that one evolves to. But it really is an interesting one when it comes to AI and trust. There's also a question about that, about social media tools.
I can chime in there with a couple that might be worth investigating. It's a great question. Social media is like a pretty cool use case, I would say, for some of the tools out there, like especially too, like obviously you want to put care and thought into your social media, but it's pretty low impact in the sense that you can fire up some of these tools pretty quickly. I'll mention 3 that we find interesting to take a look at. So one is called Agora Pulse. That's an existing platform people might be familiar with, but they have AI features baked into them now where you can basically enhance social media content with AI. So you can take a post that either you wrote or say AI might have written for you, and you can change it to be shorter, longer, more engaging, more inspirational, more funny, more shocking, things like that. Just a cool way to quickly get different variations and ideas. There's a tool called Lately Lately.ai that you can just drop in links to existing content like a blog post, and it will automatically start generating social shares for you from that. So like a list of ones that a human can just go through and kind of say, okay, I like those few, let's riff on those, let's spin off some ideas there, let's reject the others. So just kind of an ideation tool for quickly getting to a lot of social media posts pretty quick. And then another one that we use and find super helpful is called Opus Clip. And that automatically splits up long form video into those short form video clips that I mentioned for like TikTok, Reels, and things like that. We found that extremely helpful because it also like auto captions and a bunch of other stuff that's super, super useful.
That's great. I love all the different tools. So if you haven't been able to capture all the different tools we've talked about, feel free to come back and look at the recording because there's some really great ones out there. There was a build on that question, Mike. Are there any recommendations for AI tools that can take the content and put it into different formats, such as audio or other?
That's a great question. It's something we've kind of been exploring a little bit. I don't know if there are plenty of tools that will take like scripts and turn them into deep fake voices, I guess, so digital voices and voice clones. You could use something like a couple that are interesting are 11 Labs and HeyGen. Those are more for kind of creating like a deep fake of yourself or your voice, but you could use it for that. I actually noticed the other day that we use HubSpot, for instance, for everything on our website. they added a feature where I have not experimented with yet, where it will turn the blog post you just published into an audio clip. So I assume that's a feature that might be starting to come to a lot of different like CMS platforms. I had been unaware of it. Maybe it was out and I just missed it, but that's pretty interesting. A lot of these platforms are incorporating a lot of the features we're talking about. So I always like have to remind myself, okay, I need to go back and look at what HubSpot still has. Cause like, I'm in there every day, but I'm not seriously every few weeks auditing our platform usually. And I probably should be, so.
It's excellent. Yeah, you're getting props on that one. And it really brings up an interesting point. I was at a conference not too long ago, and there are all these new companies, like companies you've never heard of with names that you're like, I don't even know how to like say it or spell it or put it together. And there's so much new technology coming out, new platforms for AI. But I think it's just a reminder to say, all of those platforms that you are currently using, Salesforce, HubSpots of the world, whatever it might be, they're all experimenting in AI as well. So it might be good to reach out to your reps and get an understanding of what's new, because rather than investing in a new tool, you might be able to do some of these things with the tools and technologies that you already have in-house.
Yeah, that's a great point. That would be literally like my first piece of advice as you're exploring tools, because so many platforms are moving so fast to incorporate things. Sorry, I did see, and Nathan, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you had your hand up at one point, but if that's not relevant, just let me know if you want to chime in, or just want to make sure we don't miss you.
Oh yeah, I love the comments that you had from with Michelle and Keisha's questions, and I wanted to kind of comment on that too. I think with the trust piece, I think it's, you can be really transparent that you're using AI, or if you're using it correctly and there's human intervention, and you rewrite or make sure it feels the content feels realistic and doesn't have any weird hallucinations or something in it. I think there can be that trust there. And then the other thing is like making sure you bring in like brand and voice from who you're speaking from. You guys talked about it earlier, like personas. I think that's critical. I typically will work with building GPTs specifically around personas for brands, and will sometimes rewrite anything from other content I do and run it through that, and then still make edits to it before any type of publishing. So it always has a little bit of a tone and voice to it. If you're using whether it's blog writing, content writing, or just small text for marketing purposes. And then the other thing was like, you were talking about all those apps that Keisha had about hashtags and captions and stuff for social media. I mean, really just being very open with even something like GPT plus, and just talking to it about, here's a draft post that I'm planning on doing. I'm planning on pushing it out on LinkedIn, and just saying like, include hashtags and add a caption, or, but kind of give it the insight of like, this is where I want to go, get it started and give it some background and put enough details in it. And usually you don't always have to have another app. You can just.
Oh, you just went on mute, Nathan.
Must have hit it with my trackpad, but you get some great content there, and from just putting those prompts in, and it will give you let it know the platform that you're going to push it out on, and it usually comes back with some great examples.
Excellent. Good feedback. I love it. I love the ability to learn from one another on this call. So thank you so much for sharing and asking the questions. Mike, we are coming up on time. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to share some closing remarks for the group.
I feel like this has been such a great group to cover so many topics. I mean, I feel like we have done a lot of work here in 50 minutes, covering every like environmental use cases, like education. I would say in terms of closing remarks, like I get the question a lot from people, how do you really get started? I realize plenty of people in this group are experimenting, but might want to experiment further. Might just to kind of speak to that in case that is somewhere you're thinking about, like, hey, I've kind of messed around with some of these tools a little bit, but I haven't really done a deep dive. I would highly recommend everyone individually, whether in their life or in their work, as they're able to like pick one of these general assistants, like a Chat GPT, ideally Chat GPT plus. I'm not getting paid by OpenAI to tell you to buy the paid version, but it is significantly better and has more capabilities than your average. If you're using a free version of ChatGPT, you can certainly do some cool things, but you're not really experiencing the full power of it. But there's other ones like Claude from Anthropic, Google Gemini. Take one of these and literally make it your co-pilot throughout the day. Like, just challenge yourself anytime you're tasked with something, again, within reason of your company's rules and things, but in your personal life too. If you need an idea for something, you have an idea, you want to refine, you want to create something, you want to generate something, you want to reason through a problem, all this stuff that you're doing in your head, I'd encourage you to at least try to do it with one of these tools as much as possible over the next, let's say, month. And I think you're going to pretty quickly, if you haven't already, be pretty surprised at some really interesting things that become possible. So that's kind of like what I always try to leave people with, because if you haven't done that already and you're doing a lot of this stuff in unique use cases at work, that's awesome. But I think this can really help level up too.
I love that. That is a great suggestion, Mike. And I'll add another tool out there. Perplexity AI is another good one. And I actually did what you said without talking to you about it. And what I would share is actually kind of funny. My husband took a look at 2 outputs for content that I put together, and he liked one of them so much better. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's the one that, the bot did. And he goes, I can't believe you are less human than the bot. So it can actually have some really interesting outputs there. So what I would say is thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you for listening to the MarTech.org podcast. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at martech.org/newsletters.